What's up everybody, it's your boy MachoorTV. Today I've got a highly requested video after I've made a post on Twitter announcing that I have purchased this very beautiful controller, the Victrix Pro BFG. A lot of people have been asking me about, how is it like for fighting games? Can you make a review about it? Is it any better than the PS5 controller or the PS4 controller? So that is exactly why I wanted to make this video, just to give you guys my opinion. I've had this controller now for almost about 2 weeks, so I think it's about time that I can make a review about it and tell you my honest opinion on this controller. Now with the newly released Street Fighter 6, everybody is looking for a pad to actually play the game with as best as possible. You're trying to not drop those combos, trying to hit those drive rush cancels. I know you guys, you want to get to that master rank, you want to get to the best level that you can. So today I'm gonna show you my my controller, my new controller, and I'm gonna let you know my opinion on it. Is it actually worth it or not? As you know, this controller is quite pricey, but we're gonna figure out why I went with this controller and not the other options that we have. So as you know, the main objective why I actually bought this controller was to play Street Fighter 6 with. As you know, Street Fighter 6 is released on literally everything. Alright, the PC, PS5, PS4, Xbox Series X, and Xbox Series S also. So, however, there is a major reason that made me choose this controller, or at least it was a major criteria when I chose my next controller. So the fact that all of the tournaments right now are being played on PlayStation 5. Okay, if you go to any tournament, CEO, EVO, whatever, even your local tournament, it is highly probable that it's going to be played on a PS5. Not running a PS4 software on a PS5, is going to be running a PS5 software on a PS5, console, which is very important because there is a big rule with PS5 is that you cannot use the PS4 controller or any PS4 controller, okay, like any kind of licensed PS4 controller. For example, the Astro C40, for example, which is a PC/PS4 controller. You cannot use it on a PS5 without a converter, okay? So you cannot use it on a PS5 unless they are using a PS4 software, and you don't want that. The reason is because the PS5 version of Street Fighter 6 has support for 120 Hz, so that also limits the controllers that you can use in that scenario. All right, you have to use a PS5 certified controller. All right, unless, as I said, you want to go with converters. I've always stuck with the PS4 controller. However, there were some main problems with it. The first thing is that, as I mentioned, you cannot use it on a PS5. If I want to go to a tournament, I can't use the controller, and if I get used to it now on my PC, I play on PC right now, I can get used to it and everything, I can play with it, no problem, okay? But if I'm completely 100% used to the PS4 controller, once I go to a tournament or even an offline gathering with my friends and there's a PS5 that is available and we want to play with it, I cannot. All right, or I'm gonna have to go to the PS5 controller, which is gonna be a different controller. It feels different, and you might drop combos. You might not be comfortable with it. You know how it is, right? You want to keep one controller that you always use for every scenario. So that is one of the main drawbacks of the PS4 controller and why I had to change. Second thing is the micro USB cable. The micro USB cable disconnects a lot. No matter how expensive the cable is, no matter what cable I buy for it, it always disconnects a lot. I have to be sitting in a perfect position and not move my hand or not move the controller a lot, just to have it not disconnect. And every time I'm streaming or I'm playing on PC, it disconnects and connects again. It messes up my audio settings. The audio changes, the audio source of the PC changes to the microphone in the controller itself. I think there is a way to disconnect that, but still, nonetheless, it is a hassle. All right, and it also messes up the audio of the stream, and it's multiple stuff. And you also it can disconnect in the mid of a match or something, and it's online. You can't really, you're gonna lose the match because of a wire, a micro USB wire. So that is one of the main drawbacks. So ideally I wanted a controller with USB-C, all right? And then, the main thing about the PS4 controller is I've bought like many controllers, many PS4 controllers over the past 7 years of playing Street Fighter 5 and Street Fighter 6 right now, and each one of them has like a different personality. One of them doesn't like doing DPs consistently. One of them doesn't like doing tattoos, quarter circle backs, all right, or quarter circle forwards, all right. And the one that does shoryukens well, the one that does the DP input well, tends to not like to do a quarter circle back well, and vice versa, all right. You get what I'm trying to say, right? So there's always something wrong with it, and something that is, it's very rare when you find a controller that actually does everything for you. It does everything perfectly. And my experience is that every time I buy a controller, I buy a new controller, the first week or 10 days or 2 weeks or something, it is absolutely crap. It is really bad. The D-pad itself would be like very stiff, and the inputs would not be correct until you play with it for like a few days, and then it will just loosen up a little bit. And at that point, you can only figure out whether this controller is going to be good or it's going to be bad. And it's not going to be good for long. It's not going to be good for long. These controllers, they break so often. It takes about 4 to 5. If it survives with you for like 6 months, then it's a miracle. It's a miracle. So 4 to 5 months, I would say that's like 4 to 6 months is like the maximum that you're gonna get out of that controller. All right. Even if it might be even lesser than that. It might be even lesser than that. So if you get to like 4 months with a controller that's actually kind of good with a PS4 controller, then you're gonna have to spend another $60 or whatever to get another controller and go through the entire process of getting it loosened up, just like the previous controller. I've tried even buying the rubber part for the D-pad, the part that actually wears off from the inside of the controller. I've tried buying that specific part from Amazon, but every single time I buy it, I've tried like multiple suppliers. Every time I buy it, it just feels really horrible. It's not clicky at all. It feels much worse than buying a new controller. So there was no way for me to save money on that. I had to like buy a new controller every 3-4 months, while playing with the PS4 controller. So after the PS4 controller, I decided that okay, I want the PS5 compatibility, so I'm gonna force myself to get used to the PS5 controller, this bad boy over here. All right. And for the first few weeks, it was kind of okay. I was dropping combos, yes, here and there, but it was kind of okay. I felt like, I can get used to this one in the long run. However, this being a new controller, it actually, it started dropping combos from like the second week of like using it. The D-pad somehow the D-pad, it seems like it's actually worse than the PS4 one. I'm not really sure why. However, the main issue with this one is the grip. Don't get me wrong, this controller is absolutely incredible for what it is, for like story-based games, for like adventure games. I've used this controller like for many other games, and it's just phenomenal. The haptic feedback, the triggers, they are incredibly great. The grip is absolutely amazing. All right, I've used the Xbox controllers, I've used the Nintendo controller, the Pro controller. I've used like multiple stuff, but nothing came close to this in terms of the quality, in terms of the grip, in terms of everything. But it is not for fighting games. The grip, it actually makes you don't have much control over the D-pad as you would have on the PS4 controller. Okay, because of the fatter grip. All right, because of the fatter grip, because of the the wider body of the controller itself. So that's why I feel like that's the main reason why this controller is not as great as the PS4 controller for fighting game. And the input just seems to be like it's random. Sometimes it just feels like the input is random. Like it's like it's not consistent when it comes to like the inputs. Sometimes you get the special move that you want, sometimes you do not. So same problem with the PS4. However, I just felt like in the PS5 controller it's highlighted more. It's more obvious that the inputs are dropping more in the PS4 controller more than the PS5 controller, sorry, more than the PS4. So that is why I was like, I have to like find a different solution. So what was my third solution after going through the PS4 controller, the PS5 controller? I bought the Hori Octa. I paid about like $95, about $90, something like that. The D-pad in the beginning was fine. It was not bad. The inputs were cleaner than the PS5 controller. However, the first day when I played it, it was like an hour and a half, and that was it. However, the second day I had like a longer session. I played for like 4 hours, and my thumb was actually hurting me a lot from the D-pad. The D-pad has some kind of like weird texture on it, and it just hurts your thumb, especially if you play with like the tip of your thumb. Then it will definitely hurt your thumb, while playing like long sessions. And it felt like the D-pad was okay the first day. However, by the third day, it felt like it was starting to drop some inputs. It's like, because I play from like the left side to the right side, so my character would be on the left side and my opponent would be on the right side. So by default, I would be like doing fireballs on the right side. I would be like buffering for shoryukens on the right side. So because I'm using the right side of the D-pad so much, it felt like it was becoming much more loose than the left side, and that actually caused some dropping, some misinputs. Whenever I go to the other side of the screen, like my character is on the right side and I'm fighting the person on the left side, I would start getting like misinputs that were not there on the first and second day. So I was like, man, if this is happening like from the third day, then this is a major quality problem. On top of this, the six buttons layout on the front of the controller was just not for me. I tried their software, their PC software, to disable either the R1 or the R2, or the square and the X buttons. Okay, I tried both ways to play, and each one of them was just not comfortable at all. All right. First of all, the R1 and the R2 were much harder to press than the other buttons. I'm not talking about psychologically, I'm talking about actually harder to press. It felt like it was kind of stuck on something. I'm not really sure why. R1, R2, and the circle button. Those three, they felt more stiffer than the other controllers, and the other buttons in the controller. And I was like, how is this controller like $90 plus? How is it $90 plus, and it has such major quality issues? All right. So from the second day when I had that long gaming session, my arm actually started hurting me, like from my elbow. It started hurting me because my grip was kind of weird. It was tilted. It was tilted like this. So then I can play on the I don't play with the claw grip. I play with like a normal grip, right? So I had to like adjust my arm, so then I can press the square, X, and triangle and circle without pressing the R1 and R2, even though they were disconnected. However, I'm not looking at my control, so if you feel those buttons in your thumb, you might press them accidentally, thinking that this is like the triangle or circle or any other button. One other main issue with the controller was the design for the R1, R2, and L1, L2, the ones at the back. All right, the buttons, the shoulder buttons, they were the worst design I've ever seen. First of all, the R1, the shoulder buttons, they were very small. And I don't have the biggest hands in the world. All right, my hands are like they are kind of like above average, I would say. So I was constantly, and whenever I hit like L1 or R1, the shoulder buttons, I would constantly hit both the R1 and R2 and L1 and L2, which is like the shoulder and the trigger. Okay, the shoulder button and the trigger button at the same time, because they are so close to each other. There is literally no gap. There's literally no gap in between those two buttons. And on top of this, the L1 and R1, the shoulder buttons, are very small. So you always end up like hitting both of them when you hit one of them. It was causing me, when I'm playing Street Fighter 6, it was causing me a lot of accidental drive impacts, because drive impact, you know, is shoulder plus trigger, right? R1, R2. So I would always get like accidental DIs when I'm trying to, like, you know, just do like an R1, like a Shoryuken or something, like a heavy Shoryuken or something like that. So at that point I was like, I'm not playing this controller anymore. So I went and returned it, you know, and got my money back, got my $90 back. And it's kind of crazy that it actually cost like $90. It felt very cheap. The controller just felt very cheap, and even the buttons on the face buttons, like the R1, R2, triangle, you know, square, all of these, they sounded really nice. Okay, they sounded like mouse clicks, right? They sounded tactile. However, when you're playing with a headset like this, like a noise cancelling headset like this, okay, this is an Astro A40, and I have the mod kit on, so it makes it like noise cancelling. I think that even if you play with like a different headset, it will be the same case, where when you press on these buttons, you don't get any kind of feedback. So what I'm trying to say is that you get a feedback by either voice or like sound, like the sound of the click itself, which you could not because of the headset, all right? And you get a feedback by the feeling of pressing a button. However, you barely get any feeling of pressing those buttons. So after the Hori Octa, I needed a controller that, you know, is compatible with PS5, can work on PC, and has a great D-pad. Okay, so I've searched online, and there were not like many options left that covers all of these stuff. One of the options was the Razer Wolverine, but however, I don't like the D-pad that is, you know, that is put over here. Okay, I don't like the D-pad over here, the Xbox layout. I don't like that. I can't really get used to that. I've been playing PlayStation since I was a kid, so I'm already like used to the D-pad being over here. So I can't really like switch to here right now. Even though that D-pad, it seems like it's the best one, the D-pad of the Razer Wolverine, because it has like tactile micro switches inside. So I haven't tried it, but I've tried the Razer Rayon, I think it was called, and the D-pad was actually great. However, the rest of the controller was trash. So that's why I did not go for that controller, and the price was actually very high. So my other options were the PS5 DualSense Edge, which I did not buy because the D-pad is literally the same one on the regular you know, $60, $70 controller. So why would I pay $200 plus for a controller that has the exact same D-pad? So I ended up getting this bad boy over here, the Victrix Pro BFG, which is the star of the show. I really like this controller. I think that it's very nice to hold. It has that Xbox feel to it, like the shape, the body of it. It resembles the Xbox controller. However, it's fully modular. As you can see, you can remove these buttons and switch them up to a 6-button layout, or you can, you know, switch this up and bring the analog to here and bring the D-pad to here, you know, and there are like different faces of the D-pad themselves. However, I see that this D-pad is the best one, right? The other ones, the diamond shaped one was kind of nice, but I kept on dropping half circle forward and half circle back motions, so I didn't like that aspect. However, this one, I find this one to be like the best version of this, the best D-pad that they have with this controller. Reason being is that you can feel the edges of each direction. okay, you can feel very, very, very well. Unlike on the PS5 controller, you know, the D-pad, the edges, like they are just like, you know, they're just mushy, right? They're just mushy. You know, while you're playing a game, it is kind of difficult to like tell which one are you actually pressing. Are you pressing forward? Are you pressing down? In terms of just feeling, all right? I'm not talking about the directions. I'm not talking about, you know, like navigating the directions. Of course, like, you know, you're pressing front or back or down. You know that. However, the feel itself, you cannot really get a feel of these, and the more you play with it, the less feeling that you actually get. So we talked about the feedback from the controller that we talked about. When you feel the buttons, you don't get that feeling from the PS5 controller. However, here you do get that. All right, it is not the most you know, tactile buttons ever. I don't know if you guys can hear it. However, the edges are really great. They are, you know, elevated a little bit. If you can see, you know, in the camera, they are elevated a little bit, which makes it, you know, it's elevated from the body of the controller itself, which makes it, you know, very good for feeling the edges of the controller and knowing exactly what you actually pressed. Because you want to know whether you actually pressed, you know, you're not going to be looking down the controller. You're going to be playing, looking at the screen, you know, trying to react to stuff within like a frame or two or something. So you want to be able to make sure that you press the right thing in the controller by feeling, and this controller delivers in that. I feel like this controller, the D-pad, is actually very accurate, and every time I make a misinput, I know that it's not from the controller. I know it's from me, because I'm you know, whether I'm lazy with the controller or I'm lazy with the input, because I'm used to you know, doing like lazy inputs in this, getting the input, sometimes getting it, sometimes not. But even if I do like an accurate input over here, I might not get it also. That's the problem. But here, if I do an accurate input, I do get it. So that is a major part of why I love this controller. The D-pad is actually very great. However, I like now that I put this D-pad on, I don't know how to take it off. I don't know how to take it off. There are other versions of the D-pad. You get this beautiful, you know, case with it, and when you open it, all right, you will get this this braided USB-C cable. All right, I'm not gonna disconnect it right now. There's a place where you can keep the USB cable inside, and you get this 6-button layout, you know, for module for the controller, and you know, even for the analog stick, you get one of these. All right, the camera can focus a little bit. You can see that the edges of the analog stick, like the housing, like the cover that is around the analog stick, you know, it allows you to have like, you know, different types of inputs. All right. So anyways, so you're gonna use this screw to remove the modules and, you know, put them back on. It takes like literally 5 seconds to do it. But these are the D-pads. Okay, these are the D-pads that you get with this controller. Okay, this D-pad, no, it's not good for fighting games. That's my opinion. I don't think that this is good for fighting games at all. Maybe you want to play like a 2D game, something like an indie game or something, maybe use this. But for fighting games, I don't think so. This one was, as I said, it was kind of good, but I kept on dropping the quarter circle, you know, back, quarter circle forward. Sorry, not quarter circle. I mean half circle back, half circle forward motions with it. But now that I put this one, I can't really take it off and put another one. I don't know why. You know, it just feels like there isn't a way for me to take this off without damaging it. All right, that's that's so weird. You know, I'm not trying to like take it off because I only use this one, but it's just like a point that I should mention, because if any of you want to like move, like take it off and use another one, you know, you should be able to, of course. That is one of the things. The other thing is that the controller actually smells weird, to be honest. It smells like, you know, it's very plasticky. It smells like plastic, especially in the first few days. I noticed it because I did not smell the controller itself, but you know, I would like, it rubbed off on my hands. Like every time I would like have my hands close to my face, I would like get irritated, like my nose would get irritated from the smell. I would be like, what is this smell? And it felt like it's something chemical, you know? It's like, it smells like plastic, but it's like kind of like, you know, there's some kind of like chemical, you know, smell to it, scent to it. It's not nice. So maybe you want to like, you know, wipe it with like, you know, something that is, I don't know, use some kind of wipes or something on it and take off and get rid of the smell. Now after 2 weeks of use, it's definitely a lot better. I don't smell it that much unless I actually smell the controller itself. So that is one thing that I should mention. But it has the USB cable, so I don't get those disconnects and everything. However, when I bought the controller, I thought that I would take advantage of these back controls, buttons. There are 4 mappable buttons over here, and the thing is, unfortunately, because of the grip, while I'm playing fighting games, I cannot use this, because every single time, even if I do like the simplest of combos, I would accidentally hit one of the buttons at the back. Alright, so I immediately, from the first day, I disconnected all of them. Even the ones on this side, on the pad side, I had to disconnect them because I was getting like, you know, random buttons. However, the worst thing about this controller, I like a lot of it, but the worst thing about this controller, I feel, are the triggers. The triggers are kind of weird. The L1 and R1, the shoulder buttons are great. They sound amazing. All right, they sound really great. They feel great. They are in a very good position when you're holding the controller. You see those areas, all right? Those areas, they land on your hands very nicely. You get a very nice grip on the controller. All right, and also this texture over here, it helps, you know, it helps get you like a very good grip, especially since I have like my hands, they sweat a lot. So it's really nice. However, the R1 and the triggers, the L2 and R2, they are the worst part of this controller. First thing first, they are very sensitive. They are very sensitive. You know, even the slightest of push can trigger them. I know from the software you can adjust the dead zone of the controller, which helps on this. However, it still feels like it's easy to like get accidental hits from it. So if I have it like resting on my leg or something like this, I would get like, you know, accidental inputs from like R2 and L2 sometimes. That's not the main problem. The main problem are those, you know, those buttons, those release buttons. You see this? Those release buttons. These are the worst thing about this controller. All right. You actually, if you trigger this, I don't know, you guys just heard it, right? It keeps the R2 and the triggers. Look at them. They can't move forward. It limits the movement of these triggers. And it makes them really bad for fighting games, at least. Like for me, I don't know about shooters, but for me, it just feels like it's really bad. I can't, because I hit on it like this, and I can't really tell. You can tell, of course, but it's just not good. Trust me, this will not work if you're playing fighting games. Keeping it like this, it will not work. All right. So you always want it to be like this, like full travel when you're using the R2 and L2. All right. The problem is that when you're playing the game, if you have your hands over here, or even if you slightly just brush on them, you see that I just did not make any movement, and you already heard the click. It already, you know, initiated the release, and now I don't have, you know, full travel on the control on the triggers. What's more is, if you actually get this in the middle of a match, you cannot do it. They cannot release it back. So in order to release it back, you have to actually hold this and then pull trigger back and then release this. All right. So if you want to do this and get it back to normal, you will actually get an R2 input or an L2 input in the game. So you have to make sure that you don't touch these whatsoever. Don't touch them mid-game whatsoever. You have to adjust your grip. So then you hold it like this. You don't hold it like this. All right. You hold it like this. Make sure that you don't touch them. All right. Even if you want to like keep pressing these, no problem. As I said before, I already disconnected them, so there's no problem. which brings us to our next point. I wish those remappable buttons were removable, just like on the DualSense Edge. However, they are not, but that's not a big problem. It kind of like, you know, in the beginning, because the plastic is kind of harsh, the texture of them is like a little bit different than the other ones, than the rest of the controller. So they're just a tiny bit harsh. It kind of like, you know, hurt this part of my finger here, because it would always like rub on them like this. But now it's better. Like now I don't feel that, but it was just there for like the first few days, because it's a new product, it's a new device, and it's plasticky. It's not like it's leather or something, you know. There's one more thing about the Victrix Pro BFG that I have to mention. As you know, these are competitive controllers, alright? So the input latency is a very important topic about this genre or this grade of controllers. So basically, this controller has a lower input or a higher input latency than the other controllers, primarily being the DualSense Edge, or the regular DualSense, or the Razer Wolverine controller. This one I believe has an 8 millisecond input delay, while the DualSense Edge has about 4 ms input delay. I think the Wolverine has about 3.5, something like that. However, playing this game, playing Street Fighter 6, I have not suffered any kind of like drop combos because of the timing, or I have never was not able to like react to like drive impacts because of the latency or whatever. I have never noticed it. Right? It's just specifications for me. It's like you don't notice it while you're playing the game. You don't notice it while you're trying to react to stuff, or trying to do these fast combos, or like perfect parries that have like 2 frame gaps or whatever. Like I've never noticed this. So I just had to like mention this, because it is a main specification about these type of controllers. One more thing about this controller is that I really wish that they would start selling the modules. All right. One of the main reasons why I bought this controller is in hopes of them selling the modules later on, which is the move that actually makes the most sense. Victrix should definitely start selling the modules. If, for example, if I play with this controller for like 5 months, 6 months, whatever, and the D-pad starts breaking, or starts wearing down or whatever, so instead of me going and paying $200 again for a different controller, I would love to just like change the module. Okay, just let us buy the module, just exactly what PlayStation is doing with the DualSense Edge, where if you get like stick drift, you just change the analog and then you're good to go. It's available in everywhere. However, as I said, it is not confirmed by Victrix that this one will be sold, or like the modules will be sold independently. So don't take my word for it. I just think it's the move that makes most sense. Other companies are doing it. Other companies who sell similar products like this, they are doing it. However, they haven't still confirmed. Just as the last thing to mention, I haven't actually used this one. I haven't actually used this 6-button layout because I don't like it, as I mentioned before. You guys can hear how it sounds like, right? So I feel like it suffers from the same problem that I mentioned in the other in the Hori Octa controller, where the buttons, they sound nice, but you cannot really physically tell if they are being pressed or not. And I just don't like this layout at all. I don't play with the claw grip, so I haven't even bothered using them because I know it's just not for me. But this controller, it helps a lot in terms of the layout. The layout is exactly how I want it, and if you don't like the layout, you can switch it to the Xbox layout, where the D-pad is here, aka the wrong side. So you can definitely do whatever you want with it. But in terms of recommending this, I definitely recommend it. It's a very nice controller. It's very good. The inputs are very clean. For me, at least, the inputs are very clean. I don't have a major problem with it. except for the R2 and L2, which is something that I got used to it and now I'm fine with it. But it is still a tiny bit, you know, bothersome, a tiny bit annoying, that you have to be careful not to, like, you know, press it by mistake, or not to press the release sliders by mistake or whatever. Just to mention this one last thing to mention, this controller has a tournament mode. So if you want to, like, you know, not press the start, like while you're in a tournament, you don't want to press start or the share button or the PlayStation button or whatever, right? So there's a mode in this controller where it disconnects all of those, so then you'll be able to you know, not press them. Even though when I'm playing with this controller, I've never accidentally pressed the start button or the options button by mistake. Never done that. Unlike the PS4 controller, which I've always done that when I'm playing like offline or like in a tournament or something like that. I would always press the start button by mistake, or even also on the PS5 controller. So yeah, I guess I have big hands, maybe. I'm not really sure. So anyways, guys, let me know what you think about the Victrix Pro. If any of you have it, tell me, what do you guys think of this controller? Let me know in the comments. Help the people in the comments, you know, make a decision, an informative decision, whether they should buy the PS4 controller, whether they should buy a PS5 or the Hori Octa, or this one, or maybe even the DualSense Edge. Right, let me know, guys, in the comments, which controller do you guys like. I would not suggest that you go and buy a $200 controller without trying it first. So if you have one of your friends who has this controller or has any other controller that you like, you know, I highly suggest that you go and try it out first. Play the game with it, use it for like half an hour or something. Get, you know, the feel of the controller before you decide to cash out, because right now it's just lottery. You know, I could have bought this. I didn't try this one before I bought it. I could have paid the $200 and it would have sucked and I wouldn't have known. Alright, so it was a risk I had to take, but the best thing to do is that if you find somebody, if you have one of your friends who has a controller that you want to buy, go and try it out first. With that said, you know, I'm loving my Victrix BFG Pro. I hope this video helped you make like an informative decision on which controller to buy. If you have this controller, let me know in the comments what do you like about it, what you don't like about it, you know, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much. Take care. See you. Bye bye.